ladies and gentlemen, craft spirit enthusiasts, and those interested in the intoxicating world of craft distilleries, cideries, meaderies, wineries, and the occasional foray into breweries. It's Rich Shane, and welcome to Fermented Adventure, the podcast, where we bring you the fascinating people that are making the mash, fermenting, distilling, bottling, pouring, and delivering to you some of the finest libations in the world. Before we get started, here are a few housekeeping items. Thank you for bringing the podcast into wherever you are and whatever you're doing. We truly are grateful that you have chosen to listen and make us part of your day. It would mean the world to us if you left a 5-star review. This helps us climb in the rankings, and it makes it easier for others to find us. Don't hesitate to leave us your comments as well. If the podcast didn't meet your expectations, tell us why. We're always striving to improve. You can find us at fermentedadventure.com. We are on Instagram and Facebook as Fermented Adventure. Email us at fermentedadventure@gmail.com. All right, FA Nation, let's meet our guests. He's Allen Martin. I'm Rich Shane. This is Fermented Adventure, the podcast. Allen, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me.
Well, I'm so excited. I'm glad you're here. You're coming live from your mead making extravaganza in Arizona, yes?
Yes, Phoenix area.
Mm-hmm. Now, is it fair to call you Mead Maker Allen?
Yeah, I'm kind of getting that title now. Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm excited about and what I want to know, and we're going to talk about your journey and your story. How did you get started in mead making?
Yeah, that journey started about 5 years ago. My wife is a really good home beer brewer, and through her connections and her beer friends, we went to this bottle share, and at that bottle share party at a house was Carver Wilson. For those of you that don't know Carver, he is to me like the home guru mead maker extraordinaire in this country, at least. So at the time, I had never really tried mead. I thought mead was more like wine. And at the time, I didn't like wine, so I didn't think I would like mead. Well, Carvin, being the person that he is, took that challenge and grabbed me right around the head and said, "Come try my meads, you're going to like them." I started trying his meads one at a time. And I remember at the time, I had my favorite beer in my left hand. It was a Golden Monkey, a really good Tripel. And that beer got warm in my left hand as I was sipping his meads. And after about 20 minutes, I was feeling really good because meads are pretty strong. And I shouted over to my wife. I said, "Jackie, I'm going to start making this stuff." And everybody kind of giggled and laughed, and but I was serious. So that started the big rabbit hole journey down into mead making.
So it was love at first sip for you then, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Before then, I was kind of a Bud Light guy. Never really liked any kind of alcohol, the actual flavor. I pretty much drank just to be sociable and to, feel good. But I never really liked much of any kind of alcohol until I tried mead. And I just loved the flavors. And I was hooked.
You met Carvin. What were your next steps to get into mead making from there?
I just started reading, and dove into trying to learn. Carvin was nice enough to send me an invitation to Modern Mead Makers Facebook group, which has been probably my biggest influence, because on that group is so many commercial and home mead makers that are at the top of their game. So between reading, internet, Facebook group, and then I just started making meads, and one after the other. It first started off with just making gallon at a time. But after all the work that goes into it, and you only get like 8 or 9 bottles, that became like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. So I bumped it up to 2.5 gallon batches. And now I still do 2.5 to 5 gallon batches. But yeah, just dove right in and learned as much as I could through reading groups online and making it.
Do you remember your first mead and what it was like for you to start trying that first mead?
One of my favorite flavors is like I like orange. I like the flavor of orange. So I was thinking, I wanted to make an orange creamsicle mead. So a mead that had a lot of orange and some vanilla flavors to kind of get that creamsicle flavor. And it didn't turn out that great. But I think the second mead I made was a fluffernutter. And if you're from the New England area, you know what that is. It's peanut butter and marshmallow fluff. And I used a particular type of honey called meadow foam to get the marshmallow, and I used some extract to get the peanut butter flavor, and that actually came out pretty well. But yeah,
that sounds tremendous. I don't think I've ever had that combination of mead before.
Yeah, and the fluffernutter, Carvin talked me into he goes, just start entering contests. It doesn't matter how good you do, you'll get good feedback, blah, blah, blah. So I actually entered that fluffernutter into a Mazer Cup, which is like the Super Bowl of mead comps. And it actually got pushed to the second round. So I was really excited about that. But it didn't end up winning any medals, but it was like, it kind of gave me a little excitement as far as competing.
Being that you're in Arizona, how is it for you to source honey and even the equipment? Geographically, we're from, the Philadelphia area. What's it like for you? And talk about, maybe some of the local honeys that you're sourcing.
Yeah. So, a lot of people think of Arizona as just being, a desert. The Phoenix area is a big metropolitan area. We have everything here. We have a local honey provider named Crockett Honey. They have a lot of really good local honeys, but really I outsource a lot of my honeys, just buying online, and paying for shipping. I've actually gotten some honeys from Africa. They have some really rich, deep, so flavorful honeys there that are hard to get, but those add a lot of complexity to a lot of my meads that I make. So pretty much all over.
Now, we met at MeadCon in Baltimore, and what I can say is meeting you and talking to you and getting to know you a little bit better, I was so impressed, and even getting a chance to hear that, hey, this is a 5-year journey that you're on right now. You've accomplished a lot in 5 years. Is that your personality, that when you start with something, you're going right at it, and there's this, you're very detailed and you're very precise as to what you want to accomplish?
Yeah, exactly. So, my goal in the beginning wasn't to enter comps and to win Mead Maker of the Year and all that. My goal was to just make good mead. So that got the ball rolling. And I am the kind of person that I don't like to do things, halfway or don't do 100% as well as I can do at anything. So I just started making tons of mead. They got better. I entered local comps. It took a while before I started winning local comps, and then I started entering nationwide mead comps. And then for some reason, one day I was looking online, and I didn't even know that the AMMA, which is the American Mead Makers Association, I didn't even know that they existed. I just happened to fall upon that somewhere online. And I saw they had a Mead Maker of the Year competition, and I opened up, and I'm looking down I'm scrolling down the names on there, first place all the way down. They had like 50 names on there. I'm like, Allen Martin. I'm like, holy crap, my name is on this list. I'm like, holy crap. And I'm like, wait a minute. I don't want to be down here at 20-something place. The hell with that. I want to be at the top. And that really got my motivation going for competitions and winning comps.
Well, you led a whole panel discussion. You were part of a panel discussion, and you talked about competitions. And I was really fascinated. A lot of what you think through, there's a definiteness of purpose that you really think through, and the detail as far as entering competitions. I was fascinated by a lot of that conversation, and just the ideas and the strategy. There's strategy that goes into this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you want to win, you're competing against other people that want to win, and you're competing against people that think they make good meat as well. And a lot of them do. So every little inch of advantage that you can get yourself going into those contests, such as, like I mentioned there, entering a previously category that had a low entry count. So now, instead of competing against 20-something meads for that medal, you're competing maybe against 10. So the odds are you have a better chance. Now, does that mean you're going to win if you make a terrible mead? No. You still have to make good mead. but you can increase your odds by doing simple little things like that.
I think a lot of these strategies do apply across the board. So if you're a home brewer, if you're doing home cider, well, we know nobody's home distilling, supposedly, right? So, but the idea is you refine through the process of what you're making. You look to see and go back and see maybe some comments, some feedback that people got on their meads, or you understand who's judging a little bit too, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. After entering so many contests, you get the kind of a feel for what the judges like and what they pick out and don't pick out. So you start fine tuning your strategies. As far as, when you enter a particular mead, you have to, depending on the category, list the ingredients. Well, a lot of judges will pick apart ingredients if they don't perceive each one of those ingredients that you list. So it's really important to taste your mead right before you send it in, and then only list the ingredients that you can perceive, because if you list an ingredient you say is in there and they can't perceive it, you're going to get dinged on that. So that's another little trick.
I hope people are listening, and not just listening, but taking notes. You like the competition, don't you? Because it makes you better. So if there's a mead maker out there that, is gunning for you, and I'm sure there are at this point, but I also think you're gunning for you, aren't you? You're your competition.
I tell everybody I have no secrets. I will tell anybody anything about what I do and my processes, the way I ferment, the honeys I use, the recipes. I don't care. I want everybody to make great mead. So, and I plan to do the full competition circuit again next year. And there's some really, really good mead makers out there that are competing. And, if I get my butt kicked, I'm fine with that. So that'll just, light a fire into me to get better. So.
Are there things in the mead world you have not made yet that you're thinking about, or maybe some ideas in your head that you just haven't created just now?
I haven't really divulged or made a Polish style mead yet, which I want to do, but it's like a whole nother category or chapter of learning to learn how to make a Polish mead, and they need to age for a long time. So there's the whole time factors. If you're in a rush and you're in a hurry, that's definitely not the category you want to try to make.
I've not heard or been introduced to a Polish style mead either, but what is the characteristic of that sets that apart, makes it different, besides the aging time?
Well, one of the things is they use a ratio when they're, as far as their honey volume to water volume. So they do, 3-to-1, 2-to-1, 1-to-1, as far as their ratios. And that's kind of a Polish thing. So if you get lower on the ratio to like a 1-to-1, you have just as much honey as you do water. That's going to be a really sweet mead, right? So in order for it to get to a place where it's going to be really drinkable, you're going to have a high ABV, right? If you just put all that honey in and try to ferment that, your yeast is going to go, no.
It's going to overwhelm the yeast.
Yeah. But anyways, that much sugar creates too much pressure for the yeast to deal with. So you have to step feed. And that's one of the things I need to learn how to do in order to make a Polish mead, is to learn how to step feed my yeast, right? So you get that higher ABV, it balances out all that sweetness, and then maybe oaking it, putting it in a barrel over time and whatnot. So that's just something I haven't really tackled yet.
Well, I hope I'm there to try this when you do tackle it and you do get to that point where you've perfected it. What I will share is the meads that we tried that you brought were such a treat. They were delicious. They were refreshing. Unlike any mead that I can say I've ever had. And it really helped me understand, the difference in a lot of ways between that home brewer, that home mead maker, and those that are making on a commercial scale. You shared some of those tips and ideas, how you're refining slightly along the way to bring out flavors, to bring out brightness, to bring out sweetness, to bring out acid. And these are just things you learned as you went forward, aren't they?
Yeah, just, again, more reading. I never just said, well, I've learned enough now. Now I'm good. Now I'm not going to learn anymore. That's not a good attitude to have, because there's always more that you can learn. Fine tuning those meads. And another thing I talked about at the MeadCon was, always taste your meads right before you send them in, because they sit in the bottle on your shelf or in bulk or whatever. Every few months, the complexity of those meads is going to change. Sometimes you lose some brightness. Sometimes some of the flavors, dissipate. So you really need to open those things up and taste them before you send them in.
Talk about MeadCon. Talk about what that experience was like for you this year.
Yeah, that was my very first MeadCon, and I did not know what to expect at all. I had been to a homebrew con before for NHC, and that was just huge, just like thousands of people. And the MeadCon wasn't like that. It was much more. It was smaller. It was more, and it was actually more commercial, much more commercial people than it was home. So that kind of threw me off guard a little bit. I was tasting all these commercial meads, and I was giving them my honest feedback, and I didn't hold any punches. I don't know if you were there for some of that, but
I was actually there for some of that. Yes.
So I'm telling all these commercial people what they should do with their meads, not knowing that they were professionals. So. Yeah.
But I think that's when everybody gets together in that kind of environment, they want to be vulnerable. They want to be open. And where the mead industry is today at such an infancy, that kind of feedback helps everybody. Because when, like, you had that experience, hey, we're just drinking some beers. Somebody comes over, says, I've got mead. You're like, what's that? And then you try it and you become a fan. Now, not everybody goes to the extremes you do, Alan, where they're like, I'm going to start making this. But what I think really comes out of is it gives people more of an open palate, because now they can say, all right, I can go to, somebody that's pouring mead and I know more about it and I want to learn more about it and I want to experience more about it. In my experience and our short time together that we've had, and even on the podcast, you as Mead Maker Allen, you're impacting the industry. Do you have a sense of your place in the mead making world?
I'm passionate about mead, that. So anytime I can and just introduce somebody to mead, I feel like I've accomplished something. So I feel like I'm just a little needle in the haystack, so to speak, as far as.
You're very humble. I mean, you talk about you're like a little pinhead in the world, but Alan, you're a pinhead with this megaphone and people listen. And I think it's your genuine nature about how you go about your craft. And people sense that. People sense when, people are just, kind of being blowharded or really saying, I'd like to give you some feedback, because I look at it this way. If you help people get better, you get better. And then the whole mead industry gets better. Absolutely. I want everybody to enjoy mead and make good mead if they want to make it. And I want to make it as easy as possible for them to do that. Like I said, I don't hold any secrets. So. Well, you're making mead over there. I count 3 taps at least behind you. What are you enjoying now on the podcast? What's in your glass? So actually, this is a session piment, which a piment is going to be a grape-based or wine-based mead. And this is actually a Cabernet Sauvignon session piment that I made, and it actually just took gold medal at Mazer Cup. So, well, for those that can't see on the podcast, it's a brilliant. You see the Cabernet, you see that crimson red. It looks delicious. You've got a nice veil on the glass from where my vantage point. Oh yeah, it's delicious. It's got a good tannin and structure to it. It's. The Mazer Cup decided to do an extra subcategory this year. They did a session meads, which they haven't done before. So all of these meads that were in that group were going to be
carbonated, cold, lower ABV. I think there was like 20 something entries and I ended up getting gold. So very happy about that. And it's delicious.
Well, congratulations. Everybody has their own personality in what they prepare, what they present, what they create. What do you think is your mead personality?
I use a crap ton of different honeys. I use anywhere from 3 to 5 honeys typically in my berry, my melomels, my pie mints. Anything other than like a traditional, I've got 3 to 5 different honeys in there to add complexity. And I think when people taste my meads, they get that complexity and the flavors kind of come from different areas and different kinds of flavors. And that's one of the things I enjoy about my meads is the complexity of the honeys I use.
You talked about competing again next year for Mead Maker of the Year. What other, we talked about maybe doing a Polish mead, but what are some of the, where do you see yourself in 5 years, Alan?
Well, I'm not going to keep competing every year. It's a task. It's expensive. Having to bottle up everything and pack everything and ship it out and pay the entry fees. It's a task. But I do love getting, when you're listening to the results and you hear your name, it's very exciting. So I want to see if I can repeat, just to prove to myself that it wasn't a fluke. Although getting the American Home Brewers Association Mead Maker of the Year this year was like, wow, I must be doing okay. Because I thought maybe winning the American Mead Makers Association Mead Maker of the Year, maybe it was a fluke. So I want to try to repeat and see if I can do it again.
It sounds to me like you're what is it? Kobe Bryant would, celebrate that hour that they won the championship. And the next thing you know, he was back in the court practicing for next year. And you kind of say, all right, I won that. I'll, kind of set that aside. But my guess is you'll be working the next year to try to repeat or find another category to win at. I get a sense from you on that.
Yeah. Braggots is another category that I haven't indulged in very much. It's that's difficult to find that balance between a beer and a mead and make it so it's good.
We just spent some time with Obscurity, Mead Hall, and Cidery, and they make a phenomenally good braggot. They use that, and we did a couple. We enjoyed a couple of things this past weekend, and I've never had a braggot, and I've never had a beer come together with that much complexity and quality. It was a nice braggot Hefeweizen, and it was just delicious. So what you produce, I can't wait to, come together again and just try some of these meads and the ideas that are just coming out of your mental laboratory.
Oh man, you can't keep up with the mind because the mind can create all these things that you want to do. And it takes several months to make a mead. So you can't possibly keep up with it.
Do you see yourself going into more of a commercial role or a consulting role?
No, consulting, yes. And I wouldn't even mind making mead for someone's meadery or winery or whatever, but to be the actual meadery business owner, that's not something I want to pursue.
You have other endeavors and things going on in your personal life too, right?
Yeah, my life is good. My home life is good. My work life is good. I don't need to shuffle that up at this point in my life.
Well, for us, this was a treat. And we've covered a lot on the podcast. And for those that have listened to some of the other episodes, we have episodes where we've talked to other mead makers and they kind of give the basis on making mead. But one of the things that I was excited to talk to you about and have you share, which you have, are things like competitions, are things like the creative nuances that create that higher level mead. Is there anything we haven't talked about on the podcast tonight that you'd like people to know about, you'd like people to share with you?
I just like to maybe put out a few little, for people that are just new into mead making, because I'm online a lot of mead groups, and I see so many people that are getting into mead, which is great. But I see so many mistakes made at the beginning level that it's a little frustrating, because there are some really great resources to go to. The internet just has so much bad information. There's so much good information. And if you're brand new to mead making, how are you going to know which one is good and which one's bad?
Exactly.
So I'm telling you, get on a Modern Mead Makers Facebook group. That's what I'm on. That's what Carvin is on. I made it a point to really pay attention to the moderators, the administrators, the group experts, because there's tens of thousands of people on these groups, and not all of them give good advice. So I know the moderators, the administrators, the group experts are all going to give good advice. So follow them. Don't start out trying to make an 18% traditional mead. It's going to taste like gasoline. Okay. You have to have your alcohol in balance with your flavors in the end product. Honey in and of itself, most honeys don't have enough flavor to hold 18% or even 14% or even 12%. Most honeys, wildflower honeys, are going to be probably balanced out with somewhere around 8 to 10% ABV. So
you such a, and again, it's such a passion and such a desire to see people do well and succeed. And you want to be a leader. You want to be an educator. How do people connect with you? How do people find you? I know you said you're on Facebook. If they want to reach out and ask some more questions or just learn more about mead making.
Yeah, the best place would be on Facebook on Modern Mead Makers. I'm a group expert on there. And I will, like I said, I will tell anybody anything about my processes. I won't hide anything, because really I can give somebody my exact recipe and there's no way they could still make the exact same mead that I make, because it really comes down to, you can make a good mead with my recipe, but without all the little fine tuning and knowing what a good mead is supposed to taste like, then you're not going to be quite there. It's still going to take you some practice and some trial and error to get to the point where the people like me that win these big comps where we are at. So, and that's fine. It's good to learn that way.
Well, with Fermented Adventure, we've never made mead, but I might go after you or ask you the recipe for that fluff and udder mead, because that sounds over the top great.
Yeah, it's pretty delicious. That I wouldn't recommend that one for now. I would probably recommend my Sweet Clover Traditional. That is, I just actually blew that tap like 2 nights ago. Okay. That not only won silver at NHC this year, but it also won Best of Show in a mead comp with over 300 entries just last year. So, and it's such a simple mead to make. It's 1 honey, 1 yeast, a little bit of American oak, throw it all in there, and it's, ready in a few weeks, and it's delicious. So something like that would be great to start with.
I really hope that the same way that you are impacted, that you create more mead makers on their way too. And hopefully we've done a little bit of that this evening by the Fermented Adventure world, getting a chance to hear your story, your journey. And hopefully at some point they'll get to meet you directly and taste exactly what you're producing, because I have to tell you, when they try it, they're just going to be blown away like I was. It's just amazing stuff that you're making.
Yeah, there's not too many people that try my meads that are like, I don't like this.
Something wrong with those people, Alan.
One of the things is when somebody asks me about mead, the very first thing I ask them back is, how much time do you have? Because I will talk your ear off.
Well, I don't think you did that when we first met, but I look forward to more conversations with you in the future. Thanks for taking the time to be on the podcast. Thanks for being a friend of Fermented Adventure. And we can't wait to see you at MeadCon 2023 or the next event that we find ourselves at together.
Sounds awesome. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, Alan.